Right, it looks so everyone's online in the house, so to speak. Firstly, welcome. It's good to have everybody tuned in and to be part of this process for our important project, the Featherston Master Plan. Before I say anything more and take you through, I would like to call upon our chair of the Māori Standing Committee, Narita Hooper, to share with us and undertake a karakia for us for this evening's meeting.
Kia ora, Russell. Kia ora, everybody. Just start with a mihi. So, ka mihi mahana ki a koutou I tēnei kō. Ka nui te mihi ki a Russell Hoki. Mihi nui ki tō kōrero I tēnei wā. Nau mai ki te hāpori whānau o Paitū Mōkai Featherston. Nau mai hara mai, nau mai hoki mai. Tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Karakia te timatanga. He karakia tēnei mō te ngāhere, te whenua, te taiao hoki. So the karakia I've chosen tonight to open us is really a blessing and a mihi to the ngāhere, to our the forest, to the whenua, to the land, to taiao, to the whole environment. And the reason I chose this one is I was thinking that it really relates to past, present and future. So, you know, our ngāhere, our whenua, our environment will be, they've been there before us, they're current with us now, and they'll be there after us. And so it's important for us to acknowledge that as a taonga. And it goes. Tērā te mātangi I raupā mai nei, te kōwhiti, te upuka a tāwhiri, ka kokuti ki te tuku nui, ko te tuku nui a rāta. Ka maru I te whenua, ka horomia te mātangi, ka taka kei roto, kei te poho I tānei e whanō, haro mai te toki, haumi e hui e, tae ki e. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Kia ora. Thank you, Narita, for that. So again, welcome everyone. You're part of the process and we want it to be a good meeting this evening, and this is tonight's meeting is the initial meeting for us to do our further engagement work as we rightly shape up a fit for purpose master plan for Featherston, looking out across 30 years, which is in itself is a challenge, but tonight you're here as part of the commencement of that. Just as part of brief introductions, I'd like to acknowledge the Mayor Alex is soon to arrive. He has commitments with the Greytown Community Board, so he will be joining us shortly, but I do want to acknowledge the attendance tonight of Councillor Olds, Councillor Hay and Deputy Mayor Councillor Eames. We also have reps from the Māori Standing Committee. We have Jason with us. Hopefully Mark Shepherd is there, the chair of the Māori Standing Committee. And I just want to check that.
Community Board.
Featherston Community Board, sorry. But I don't see Mark's name there currently.
Yeah, I am there.
Okay.
And Claire Bleakley.
And we have Claire Bleakley from Featherston Community Board also with us, which is great. Mark, as chair of the Featherston Community Board, would you like to say a few words? This opportunity for you to say something?
Kia ora everyone. Really good to see people on here, obviously the councillors and what have you, but mainly members of our community, which I think are really important. I mean, you're the important ones. You're the ones we're there to represent. And moving forward from tonight, we're learning a lot about this as well. So speaking with Colin Olds, we will be holding a drop-in. We want to open a drop-in centre in town so that people can just come in and meet up and just ask questions moving forward. So it's a big learning curve for all of us. But as we said, this is all about the community. So yeah, really good to see everyone on board, and hoping you get some information out of this tonight.
Thank you, Mark. Thanks for that. Just up on screen at the moment is the agenda. So the purpose of the meeting is to kick off and get build up the understanding as to what a master plan involves and the process, and also to tap in and hear your views and to record those later in the evening as part of a series of 6 questions. We want to tackle an overview of what developing the master plan involves and give some background. As I say, what is a master plan and why we do master planning work, what it seeks to achieve, and also give you detail of the process that's happening during this year. And then the latter part of the meeting, after we've taken about 20 minutes to take you through on master planning and process, we want to dig into those questions, and Ree will take you through that carefully. And as we go through, if there's any unsure bits, then we'll respond to those questions. So we've got 6 questions there. And we'll also, before we get into the questions, we'll just cover off some polite housekeeping rules as well. And then towards the end of the meeting, we'll tackle next steps, what happens after this meeting. Thank you. So in attendance, you've got myself, General Manager of Planning and Environment of the Council. We have Ree Anderson here, and who's done a lot of master planning and spatial planning work throughout the country for helping different councils, so it's great to have Ree here. And we also have Richard Knott, who works very closely with Ree and her consulting work, and he has urban design skills and adds all that value as we work towards drafting up a master plan. Also in attendance for the online meeting, we've got Kendall Harper, who's intermediate planner, and Kendall's great at coordinating things and making things happen so the process rolls along. We also have Harriet Barber, another planner in our team, and Harriet's, she's missed technology tonight to make things happen, and she's also being used for some mapping skills and compiling stuff as we go along. I'll just hand over to Kendall, who can give you some recent history about the Wellington Regional Growth Framework.
Okay, so the Wellington Regional Growth Framework is a regional spatial plan and blueprint. It's not just for the Greater Wellington region as well. It also covers, as you can see here, all the way to Levin and all the way to Masterton through the growth corridors which run along the railway lines. So the growth framework has been led by local government, central government and iwi partnerships. It has been completed in 2021. What else have I got here? So most importantly, you'll see on there that Featherston has been identified, and it is identified as an urban renewal area, which means that the current urban area will be developed rather than Greenfield, which is new development areas. So that's been very important. Also at the same time, if you go to the next one, we ran our spatial plan process. So this is on a district level. First stage of consultation looked at what we wanted across the district, and things like development, what else we have?
Things to protect,
which came across dark sky, improvement of the lake, all of these matters. But what came out on top was housing. So each of our towns had areas put forward, and you'll see for Featherston, this wasn't just for residential development. A lot of other matters such as urban renewal and rejuvenation along the main street, integration with transport, as well as some other matters were brought forward. So for Featherston, we have this final map. So for FA, you'll see there, that is a development area situated around the Featherston railway station that is within 5 to 10 and 15-minute walking distance. So that's sort of the key node there to integrate into transport. FB and FC are also residential areas that have been put forward and will have different characteristics there. So when we're talking about master planning, we're talking about master planning all of FA, FB and FC. And that's not only housing, that is key infrastructure, urban renewal, parks, commercial and economic opportunities. Is there anything else you'd like to add to that?
I think one of the really important things of the spatial planning process for South Wairarapa District, as Kendall mentioned, housing was top priority. So the council decided to do step 1 of residential growth areas. But because the regional spatial plan identified Featherston as a growth area around the train station, all of Featherston was included. And what Kendall has just outlined is that area within red includes the dotted line, which was the 5 to 15-minute walking distance from the train stations. But at the edge, whether there are some other areas that should come into the planning of Featherston. So this isn't just about planning the residential areas. This is about planning for the future of all of Featherston within the red boundary. So this is very much about a process of integration. So thank you, Harriet. So just thinking about what is a master plan then, it is an overarching plan that talks about the structure of a place, how it works and how activities relate to each other, and how do we get connection between different activities and good accessibility, whether it's between, schools and the train station, schools and homes, businesses and homes, and also all our recreational areas. So it's about an overarching plan that tries to bring those together, but it's trying to bring them together when there is change. And there is change in Featherston now. It is growing, and you will have seen that yourself just by the nature of the development that's rapidly starting to happen, and those who are from other areas such as Wellington coming to Featherston because they see that as an attractive place to buy a home, and at the moment a more affordable home relatively speaking to other places, albeit that growth is now driving up housing prices. It is also a plan, and the Chair Mark identified this, that's about the community and about your views and your values, and captures those, and also fundamentally ensuring that it enables Māori values to be incorporated as well. So a visibility for iwi and hapu as well as the wider community. And outside of that, it has to be a plan that identifies what happens to implement it, because a plan is meaningless unless there's a plan about how do we actually deliver on it. And in that sense, while it's a plan that is looking to the 5 to the 10-year horizon and beyond, there is an opportunity through this process to think about some quick wins. There might be some small things that you would like to reflect on that the council might be able to say that's something that we could do sooner rather than later. I've heard, for example, that there may be a little bit of concern about graffiti. So are there some quick wins or some initiatives that this plan might also be able to identify that things can happen now while we're also looking at that overarching plan? Thank you. What we wanted to do is just give you 2 examples of master plans, because we wanted to indicate that master plans can occur at different scales. So this is the master plan for Portuguese Town Centre, and Richard Knott, who's my colleague who's online, has assisted with the Portuguese Town Centre. I just wanted to mention that if we were comparing this plan, master plan, to Featherston, you'd only be looking at the main street more or less of Featherston. This area is about 11 hectares in total. We're not talking about just the main street in Featherston. We're talking about 350 odd hectares within that red line. But we wanted to show you that it happens at different scales. And also the Portuguese Town Centre is an existing urban area. And an existing urban area in planning jargon terms is called brownfields. So Richard's just going to take you through some of the key elements of this master plan, and it's relevant because it is an existing urban area and Featherston is too. So it's how do you plan for a place when you've already got existing things happening there. So Richard, I'll pass over to you, thanks.
Yeah, kia ora, everyone. Just a sort of a brief overview of this because it is relevant, as Ree said. One of the first things that we did when we began work at Portuguese was to gain an understanding of the local property market. And that's something we're doing in Featherston. So What we didn't want to do was actually put forward a master plan that didn't reflect the economics of development in that area. So we actually spoke with local real estate agents and got a good understanding of current values and construction costs within that area by working with quantity surveyors, which enabled us to run some numbers and to understand what type of developments were feasible now, what could happen in the near future, and what we could potentially be looking at long term. And that's because of Portuguese, in the same way that Featherston is seeing increased property values coming through. And that's partly because of the economic development that's taking place in the area with the new harbour entrance and various commercial developments taking place that are linked to that. And that's in the same way that we're seeing values increase in Featherston, with people seeing it as somewhere where they could move out of Wellington to and re-establish themselves. So the key moves, I guess, shown here again are sort of relevant in so much as much of a Portuguese town centre is single-storey commercial development along the main street, and our studies showed that there would be potential opportunity in the not too distant future to look at two-storey developments there. And on that edge along the top, where we've got a couple of blue lines and you can see some yellow buildings along the top of the image, even looking at some potentially three-storey apartment development along there. And this is in a town which is characterised really by single-storey residential development and some two-storey residential. So the key moves were looking at increasing the opportunity for people to live and work in the town centre. So I think that's something which we'll clearly be looking at in Featherston in the same way. What are the opportunities for increasing housing by looking at the way we use the town centre area? Other things I think that were key to this, we're actually thinking about connectivity and how you get it in and out of the town centre area. And again, that's something we're looking at for the whole of Featherston. You know, what are the transport movements? What are the key moves? What are the key routes? And for instance, if we need a new supermarket in a Portuguese, we were looking at how we could integrate a new supermarket into the development as and when one's needed, when population's risen to the extent of supporting that. You'll see at the top there's an orange link that talks about new pedestrian link. So again, we were looking at things like that. How do we get people to walk easily in and out of the town centre? And then going down to a more detailed level, we identified a series of key moves that could be made in terms of small areas within the town centre where we wanted to upgrade the local environment. So we've got those areas that are marked as sort of pale blue colour along the street. So they're areas where we're looking at environmental improvements in terms of changing paving, altering parking, and creating spaces that become slower speed spaces that are more pedestrian friendly than they currently are. And also you'll see in the bottom right, and there's also one in the left and another one further out of town, looking at gateway treatments. How can we mark the entrance into the town centre to, you know, make people realise they're entering a different area where perhaps they need to drive more carefully and behave a bit differently to perhaps how they're currently behaving. So there's some of the sort of key moves that we identified. Laying over this was a wider sort of strategy in terms of identifying, let's call them sort of areas or zones within the town, areas that we wanted to see limited change, the heritage precinct, but where we wish to encourage, you know, perhaps coffee shops and then more of an evening economy, and other things within, you know, within other parts of the centre. So that's a really quick overview, but the process we went through, I think, is quite similar to that which we're going through in Featherston, and I think some of the things we're thinking about and we want to challenge and find out are similar. So thank you.
Thanks, Harriet. And we're just going to the next slide. And so what I wanted to do here was also show you another master plan, and this one is Tairawhaka Master Plan for Live-In. And this is an area of the southwest of Live-In, where a major state highway transects part of this development area. You'll see just there on the eastern side. And the reason I wanted to put this one up, and I wasn't involved in the detailed planning, master planning of this, but I was involved in setting up the process so that a master planning occurred, is that this area here is around 420 hectares. And so that's not too dissimilar to the 350 to 60 hectares we're looking at Featherston in terms of scale. You'll see here that it's greenfield. So greenfield is when you've got kind of farmland or being converted into urban development. The only existing development in this area is some very large lifestyle blocks. So they had to be taken into account in terms of this. But of course, the number of people that are going to live in this community is such that it would support, for example, a village centre, as well as new recreational opportunities and educational opportunities. And so you'll see there in the heart of this area, there's an area that's identified for a new village centre and educational and recreational activities. The state highway itself was a huge issue. It's called Ultaki to Levin Highway, or O2NL. And they did look at different propositions as to whether or not the state highway should be moved. That was with, New Zealand Transport Authority and the relevant other authorities. They decided to keep it where it was, but the master planning therefore then had to look at how did it integrate development and how did it provide a buffer to that particular highway, which is becoming a more important transport link. But the other reason for showing you this plan is that you will see that there is quite a lot of detail around the streets and the structure of the blocks and the subdivision pattern. And so master planning can be at the level that Richard talked about, and it can also be at a more detailed level. For the Featherston master plan, we'll be doing a little bit of a combination of both, whereby we have identified that we will do 2 detailed plans of 2 areas within Featherston. And so through this process, we will probably look to, with the councillors, community board, etc., once we've heard all the feedback, priority which of those areas need the detailed plans. So if it might be, for example, around the train station might be one area where there's some more detailed planning. And of course, you'll get a chance once, options are put on the table to give further feedback, and that's built into the process. Thank you. And so then we might say, well, now we have a little bit of a picture of what a master plan is and what it can be, and it'll be shaped to meet your unique circumstances. Why are we doing one? Well, Kendall's already identified that it's part of the Wellington Regional Growth Framework, and it has been identified within that growth framework. So there's a huge opportunity there because, you can put on the table to try to be one of the priority development areas within the greater region, and that is under discussion through your mayor and your CEO of the council. But also it is around enabling a planned approach and getting the best use out of huge public investment. So you have a train station, you have a rail line, you have a state highway, you have public schools, you've got public parks, you've got recreational facilities, a swimming pool. How do you get the best out of all of those things and you make it the best environment for your local community to access those things? So that's one of the other reasons, and to get coordination of all the public agencies who deliver, working with the community and all the local communities who help to deliver on this as well through local leadership, and coordinate the action so that you're doing things kind of at the same time in the right place at the right time. And, you have an impact. And it's also about trying to address new challenges. And one of those new challenges we do know for Featherston is that the cost of housing has increased significantly. And so how do we make sure that we maintain that this is a place that currently local residents, because you've got a high percentage who are renting, can stay, and as well as embracing new residents and the opportunity that they bring. So thank you, Harriet. And so I'm just passing back to Russell now. He's going to give you an overview of the process. Yeah,
thanks, Ray. So our process for the year, master plan is going to run through to December, and it's visually captured here with our simple process diagram in the colours. We've got the pinky red there, which is all the elements of informal, gaining informal feedback and creating all that initial liaison and engagement in an informal manner with agencies, community, working towards a foundation document, and even at the very start of that, looking at the evidential base of what has been, what information we have had to start with, and Ree's done that early part. The next layer down is the more formal or mid part of the work, and that's testing elements of the feedback, looking at feasibility options, or compiling options and looking at the feasibility of it, and then working towards compiling a draft master plan, linking back with the community board and councillors and checking that it's fit for purpose before we release the draft in August of this year. And then following the release of the draft document, you'll see in the green there, that's the submission period, whereby we've got to sit quietly and receive and check all the stuff that's fed back to us as to issues or elements that we need to recheck through the submission process, and that will involve hearings, so there'll be opportunity there. And then towards the end of the year, around mid-October into November, we've got council deliberations, and councillors working with staff will have those deliberations and check and recheck the document that is fit for purpose and relevant. And then by the end of the year, we want to produce our final Featherston master plan and have it adopted.
Thank you very much, Russell. And then it also can feed into what the implementation program is. What we want to do now is go into the workshop and hear from you. And I want to just talk to you about the workshop methodology, but you've just heard a lot of information. So just before I do that, I'd just like the opportunities. Are there any questions about what we've presented so far? If you could just please look at the bottom of your screen, there'll be a little icon, reactions, and if you could just click on the raise your hand icon, then we can take any questions on any of the material that's been presented just for 5 minutes or so. Are there any questions? Councillor Rolls?
Yeah, thanks very much, Ree. It was interesting looking at the Greenfields approach as against the Brownfields approach for Featherston. And one of the problems we have, of course, is that we've been trying to implement some change, certainly in Fitzherbert Street, for a number of years now by talking to various property owners about the state of their buildings. When we do a plan, obviously we would like Featherston to look lovely as people drive into it, as the gateway to the Wairarapa. How do we deal with those incidents or those particular individuals to bring them around to our way of thinking?
Well, I think that's where a dialogue needs to open up with those owners, and I apologise and respect that may have already occurred, but we can also continue that dialogue through this process. So thank you for identifying that.
Cheers, Tom.
If I could just add there, I think having a good understanding of the economics of development, particularly within the commercial area, will help inform that conversation as well, which put us in a position we're not currently in terms of having that understanding.
And just on that note, because I'm working with another small town where there's a commercial area, in fact, Richard and I are both working on that area where there isn't a lot of commercial feasibility. And in that particular case, the recommendations are is to keep enhancing the public realm and the public amenity because at the moment it's so not commercially viable for the upgrading. So doing as much as possible and some simple things too, like even painting, shop fronts and those sorts of things. Thank you. So now we've got Ben. Have you got a question, Ben? If you could just put yourself on unmute, thank you.
Hi there. Yeah, I do have a few questions. I want to know whether it's going to be safe to walk to the supermarket or walk to the doctor on some flat ground without having to walk on the wrong side of the road against traffic, walk through puddles, or walk up curbs. I've seen many old people having difficulty with this.
Thank you, Ben. Those are matters that we can take on board in the master plan, absolutely. Any other question, Ben? You said you had a couple.
Yeah, I do. You mentioned graffiti. I think graffiti is a part of society and it represents everyone in society, people that don't have a voice. So if they're able to express themselves, that should be allowed, not on people's private property and in a designated place. And we have the skate park, which is a good facility. I think that is an area with the graffiti board that's there can be graffitied on, and it should be promoted that that is an artistic place. I would like to see that. And I noticed that that board has been painted over white, which is a bit controversial for the people that use it as a graffiti board.
Thank you. So that's another idea that we can take on board. So are you happy that I move on, Ben?
May I just quickly say, I'm working on the bridge across the Tairawhaka River at the moment, and there's no path from the bridge into town being planned at all, and you have to share the road with the quarry upgrade. So it's going to be bikes and trucks on the same road, which means that a lot of people will not use the cycle bridge. I will not be able to use it with my young child, and elderly people won't be able to use it. It will be only specialized cyclists, I guess. I want to know if there's a plan to build an independent cycleway, a very correct and good quality one. Thank you.
Thank you. We're certainly looking at the integration of cycleway plans as part of the master plan. Thank you.
Thank you.
Rachel.
Kia ora. My question is about the consultation process, workshopping, etc. There will be people who will have an opinion but are harder to reach. We're probably all people who, well, obviously we have access to the internet and are well, mostly comfortable in forums like this. What about people who are less easy to engage with, teenagers, maybe seniors, people with disabilities, in gathering information to determine how Featherston should be shaped? How are we reaching out to those people who are harder to reach?
Look, thank you very much for that. And we're just in the process of finalising a proper stakeholder and community engagement plan. And part of the reason of this very early initial engagement was to get a sense from yourselves as what might be appropriate ways to do it. So we've heard from 2 councillors tonight, for example, of the drop-in opportunity, the drop-in centre, those sorts of things. We can look to some kind of activities perhaps on a Saturday morning that might be more engaging to youth. Russell and Kendall are going to reach out to the schools, and they did that for the spatial plan, and I think they interviewed year 13 students for the spatial plan. So we certainly want to engage with all parties. If there is a disability society or something like that within Featherston, very happy to, you know, engage one-on-one, and we are doing that with different stakeholders, and we've initiated that process. So thank you for those ideas, and we'll keep checking in on that. And also, Emily. Did you have a question, Emily?
Yeah, kia ora. Thank you very much. Yeah, thanks for the description of what a master plan is. I thought that was a really good presentation. Thank you. Just a question. It's an election year. So the elections will happen in October at the same time that you're talking about doing the council deliberations. Have you considered how that's going to affect your timeline?
Yes, we did, Emily, and we discussed that with the councillors and community board, just I think it was on Monday. And the process that Russell's outlined is try to work backwards from the end of the year when we want the plan completed. So what will probably happen is the draft will be notified before elections. That allows time for submissions to be made. Then when the new elected council comes in, they can receive all the submissions, they can have a hearing and hear the views, and then the plan can be shaped and formulated with the new council. So yes, we have. So there might be a little tinkering at the edges of that timetable, but we're working to having it completed by December.
Yeah, thank you for that question.
Thank you.
William.
Hey, kia ora koutou. I just had a couple of quick questions. One relates to the process and one's more content-wise. So I'll start with the content one first anyway. Over the last year or multiple years, we've been under water restrictions, and we've had a number of power outages and things over the last year as well. With the plan for this to be growing Featherston, are there any plans being built into that, and how the supporting services are going to be upgraded and improved to sit alongside those? So that was one part, and the other bit was more on the process. And there's going to be a number of agencies involved in delivery of this. You're going to have NZTA, potentially police, Metlink, excuse me. Are they going to be involved in the development of the plan, or is it more that the plan will be developed and then they will be given it to try and build into their systems? Or will it be a co-design process with those agencies at the same time?
Yeah, so William, thanks for that. And I should have really mentioned when we were doing what is the master plan, absolutely it's about integration with infrastructure. So we will be working alongside Wellington Water, we'll be working alongside the transport team within council, but also working with central government agencies. So in terms of whether or not this is co-design, it's much more co-design than not. We've already engaged with Ministry of Housing and Urban Development, Greater Wellington Regional Council, Waka Kotahi and Kāinga Ora. We're going to come together again with them at the end of April, and we've put that off till the end of April because what we're doing now is making sure we've got all the community, not all of the, but, you know, the initial community views. We'll go with those views to the agencies, and then we'll sit around the table again together with all the evidence and data that we've gathered. So, yep, I hope that's answered your question.
Thank you very much.
Daphne.
Kia ora.
Kia ora.
I sort of just want to touch on a couple of things that people have already raised, which have been really good, and that's around integration. A number of times it's stated that this is residential only, this is growth, and yet a lot of it is in the urban area. So that integration seems to be really important, and it doesn't seem to be built into the time frame, because that would add quite a bit of work in there. The other thing is that I understood from the regional growth framework that they were very concerned about our lack of infrastructure, and therefore any support around our development would be key on getting that infrastructure in place. So it would be good to see a timeline around some of those key infrastructure issues that Featherston faces. And I would also like to just reiterate the importance of that diverse consultation. If you look at today and take out staff, we've probably got 15 people. That's not a broad cross-section of people in Featherston. So I would urge you to actively either extend that time frame that you have on your map. I'm a bit concerned when I hear you're working backwards, because to me that gives me a fear that you're going to squish things to make fit your timetable rather than how long it takes to do the work properly. So, so that's just a few comments that I had on what I've seen so far.
And thank you. In terms of the infrastructure, absolutely right, Daphne. When we do a plan of this nature, we need to think about what the staging might be, and that in part will be dependent on the nature of the infrastructure in terms of capacity. And so then we have already been involving, as I said, for example, Wellington Water. And we've taken this also on the basis of the work that was done for the South Wairarapa spatial plan, and we had those agencies involved then to help us determine around the growth. So this has been done in that coordinated fashion. Just in terms of timeline, it's always a really fine balance. We could take longer, but as we take longer, there might also be more compromise happening, because growth is happening in Featherston now. And that means that development might occur on sites in a way that isn't where you want to go in the future. And it might mean some lost opportunities. So we're trying to balance making sure we have very rich engagement and very happy to have multiple ways of engaging, and that's what we're doing, as well as trying to advance it. Ultimately, it will be councillors' call as to whether or not they wish to extend the timeline. At the moment, that's the timeline that's been approved. So, and whether that gets adapted or changed really will depend on the nature of what happens as we proceed. Thank you, Daphne. Are there any other questions?
Can I just add to, given what you raised earlier about the possible change of council in October, I think it's vitally important that emphasis is put into communicating all the details of this so that any future council has an opportunity throughout this process to be heavily involved and not have to pick up things that have been kept secret, if you like, during this process.
We're definitely not being secret. We want you to be transparent and open as possible. Thank you. Rachel.
Thank you.
So just a quick one, and I think it's been touched on, but in the process of urban renewal, has any thought been given to compulsory purchase of places that are seen as detrimental to the process of urban renewal?
At this stage, we haven't looked at compulsory acquisition. Usually that is a last resort. If there were some areas that needed to be acquired for whatever reason, the first step normally that any council would take is to try to negotiate and see whether there was a willing landowner and to work with them. Compulsory acquisition is a tool that council can use, but councils only use it when that is the last resort, in my experience. But it may come up as a matter. Okay, so I'm going to actually move on now. Thank you very much for those questions. We're going to move on to the part where we want to get your views on the questions that I know that you've seen. Just before we do that, I want to talk about the workshop methodology, and I want to tell you a story about an 8-year-old girl, Alice. Many of you will know J.K. Rowling, and she is the author of the Harry Potter series. J.K. Rowling had her first manuscript for the Harry Potter series for her book rejected by 12 editors. One day, the chair of Bloomsbury Board gave Alice the first chapter of the Harry Potter manuscript to his daughter Alice, who was 8 at the time, who was an avid reader. She read the first chapter. She loved it so much that she ran downstairs and just wanted more. It was on that basis that Barry Cunningham, who was the chief executive of Bloomsbury at the time, awarded a contract for the first manuscript and the first book of the Harry Potter series. And we all know the result of that. She's now a billionaire, and there's a whole publication of many of the Harry Potter books. Now, you might ask, well, why is Ree telling us this story? Well, the reason I'm telling you is because in this book, The Influential Mind, where that story is told, research has shown that if we have a room full of people, let's say we've got 12 editors and one other person, Alice, 13 people, if we went round that room and we started to go around the 12 editors, if there generally was a consensus, by the time you got to Alice, there's only a 30% chance that she would stand up and voice a different opinion. And so what I wanted to mention that story is tonight, when we hear your views, your view might be the Alice in the room. You might have a very different view from somebody else, and we'd like to hear all views because we just don't know where that will lead us, and we're here to be respectful of every view. And then, you know, as we move forward and we discuss and debate and we test with evidence, we will come to some landing places. So we're here with a very open mind. Thank you. And so now we just do housekeepers rule. We really would like you to keep your cameras on if possible. Mics off unless speaking. That's primarily because of the echoing. If you can, if I am asking you to respond, if you can just mention your name, just your first name's fine before speaking, that'd be great. As I said, we're trying to get constructive debate and many views. We would like you to raise your hand if I ask if you're agreeing with something. If you have a question, and we would like you to put on the thumb icon if you actually agree with something. Okay, so if I'm asking if you agree, if you could just put your thumbs up. If you're asking a question, just use your hand. We have a flexible agenda. We've only really got now about an hour in terms of the questions. We may not get through all of the questions, and if we don't, that's fine because you've got forms and you can email them into us. If you have any technical problems, I'll give you my phone number now. It's 027 687 9709, and if you ring that, I'm going to pass it to Harriet or Kendall, and they might go out the room and talk to you just about what your technical problem is and try to make sure that you get on board. Also, we are recording this session, so just so that you're aware of that, that allows us to go back and make sure that we captured all the information. Also, I'm going to be standing up soon when I ask these questions, and I'm going to be writing on some flip charts, because that's also a method for me to record things. You will not necessarily be able to read what's on the flip charts, but don't fear, I will be making sure I have them typed up later and that we've got and captured all of your views. So now, thank you, Harriet. We're going to start with question 1. And once I've actually just gone through the question with you again, we're not going to share the PowerPoint anymore, because that way we can actually see you better in terms of everyone who's here. So the first question is what would you like Featherston to be like in 10 years' time, and describe your vision for Featherston? So thanks, Harriet. We'll just come up. Who would like to answer that first? Anyone like to put their hand up? Thank you, Rachel. If you could just unmute yourself, Rachel.
Damn, sorry. The first things that came to my mind were not the things that I expected to. And number 1 is safe and friendly. So those are conditions that enable us to raise healthy, happy people. Yeah. So safe and friendly was the first thing that came to my mind.
Thank you.
And I was also kind of, I would really love for it to be vibrant. I like the artistic kind of bent that Featherston has, but that not so much of the gentrification, if you know what I mean. The development and growth and acceptance and inclusive, but accessible and welcoming, and a place for people who have lived there for decades.
Okay, so I'm just going to ask you a question, Rachel. What would Featherston look like if it was friendly?
There would be a mixture of diverse people who are accepting of each other. Some of the harmful behaviour that we do see.
What harmful behaviour do you see?
People walking around each other's properties, strangers. I think one of the strengths is that people do talk to each other and say there's somebody a little bit, there's somebody a little bit suspicious walking around. So alert and connected, where we think it is our business if something isn't going right, and we come forth with ways to help, not just ways to throw mud.
Okay, thank you, Rachel. Ron. And Rachel, if you just put your hand down, that'd be great.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, we're the first little town that you come as soon as you get over the Rimatakas. So I actually would love to see the town to the point where people are stopping and they're actually spending their money here before they hit Martinborough or Greytown. Like, it's a beautiful little town. We've been here, we moved here in September, and I love the town. It's a friendly town, and yeah, if we can get more people to stop, that would be amazing. So, you know, green spaces, coffee shops, you know, you got beautiful bookshops. So, you know, just expand what's here. Yeah, just expand what's here, and just really get that artistic feel that we've got here, and get people to stop.
Thank you. If I could describe that you'd like Featherston to be a destination, is that correct?
Absolutely, yeah.
Fantastic. Okay, then we've got Emily.
Yeah, thanks. It's hard to disagree with anything that's been said already, but I see Featherston as both a commuter town and as a gateway to the Wairarapa. And by that, I mean Featherston is a gateway not just to the other towns, but also to the Rimataca, all of the coastline, and not just something to drive through. It is definitely a destination, but also a gateway to the rest of the region.
Fantastic, thank you. And the commuter town, Emily, so you're very comfortable about it also having that dual role?
I think that's, you know, I'm a public servant, I'm a commuter. I think the commuters have brought a lot of community and strength into the region. And that's why it's a walkable commuting town. Yes, definitely.
Great, thank you. Sam?
Hey, not sure if my sound's working. Is that, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Yep, we can hear you.
Cool. So the family and I moved here about 3.5 years ago and absolutely love it. We started off being commuter family, but now I work from home. So we need resiliency in our infrastructure, our internet, whether that be fiber connection or copper or 4G. I have a lot of trouble with that. We also need to somehow make Featherston a destination for tourists, anybody passing through. But not only that, a place sort of that people will stay when they come. So if you move here or you are born here, you'll want to stay.
Okay. Is there anything in particular you think you could change apart from the internet and those sorts of things that would help people stay?
At the moment, the hot topic on my mind is making sure that young people are looked after, have all their needs met in our town.
And can I just ask you, what do you think young people need? I don't know if you've got any children yourself, but what do you think? So
at the moment, we cater really, and this is only a very narrow-minded approach, essentially. We cater really well to your traditional sports and all that, but for other things such as skateboarding, BMX, rollerblading, all your roller sports, action sports, we don't really cater that well for.
Okay, thank you.
I'd like to increase around the action sports and the way we look after our youth.
Fantastic, thank you very much. I'm just checking, Joe, you had your hand up earlier. Did you want to say anything, Joe? Your hand was down.
Yeah, I just typed it into the chat because it was more of a general comment. We have got some great things on offer in Featherston, but they're not well signposted. So an example of that is as you come off the hill and head towards Wakefield Street is not signposted saying Wakefield Street, and there's no signage for the Lights Sports Hub or anything that's on offer.
So that might be a quick win, Joe.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Councillor Olds?
Thanks very much. Yeah, so we're very fortunate as in a little town like ours that we've actually got a rail siding. For my vision for the future would be to have job creation within our community so that people don't need to commute out of the area. And having a rail siding, there's huge opportunity for a commercial development, industrial type settlement within the bounds of Featherston. That would create the jobs, it would retain our youth in the district. And it's one of the key things that I'd like to see happen in the future.
Thank you, Councillor Olds. William?
Just have to unmute yourself, William.
Yeah, sorry, I was just trying to find the button and I kept missing it. I was going to say Benjamin actually had his hand up before me, sorry. And then I just took ages to say that. So.
Sorry, William, you're very hard to hear. Can you just say that again?
You're wanting Ben to go?
I was just saying, yeah, Benjamin was up. He was up well before me. I just thought I'd let him go first, but it took me a long time to unmute to say that. Sorry.
No, William, you go ahead. I'm happy to listen. Thanks.
And the reason, William, I asked you because Ben's already had one chance. So I'm asking you first. Okay,
no worries. So I was thinking something I'd like to see in 10 years is having there be more of an evening side really to Featherston. You come in, you get towards the end of the day. There's Brackenbow. There's now Vixenberger, but there's not many places to eat out. There's not many things for people to do in the evening to go out and be on the main street. You don't particularly want to be on the main street in many cases anyway, and it's one of the challenges I know that Booktown is faced with, how you engage people and catch people as they're coming through town, have people out and about. You go into the likes of Martinborough and Greytown, you got a lot more options in the evening, and you've got a lot more people being able to be out on that sort of street front safely. So it's something I'd like to see change and move forward.
And so, William, some of the work that we're doing around development feasibility will help to inform that, but also the growth that's occurring means that there are people around that, you know, because you have to have a commercial economy around it. So we'll be feeding that back in and as outputs as we go forward. So Ben, you've been patiently waiting.
Hi again, thanks. I just wanted to share with you how I live in Featherston, how we live in Featherston with my young family, and we like to go for lots of walks, we like to ride our bikes, and we like to be part of the community, but we find getting anywhere very difficult. Once we're at the playground, it's fine. When you leave the playground, where do you go? Do you push the pram through long grass or through a ditch? Do you come up behind the town square, across some gravel where there's some shelter? But the shelter is not designed for shelter to be sheltered from the weather. It's really an architectural feature. You can't actually push a pram up onto it from an end. You have to come in from the side, then you're under it for a few seconds, and then you're out again. And the other end of the town, coming from the doctor, there's no pedestrian access there. There's a 5-way intersection that has open culverts, not correct footpaths. For us, it's a difficult town. We can't go for a loop walk. We actually have to drive to Greytown to ride our bikes because it's safer. I would like to see within 10 years, the basics, you know, that's sort of all. Thanks.
That's very helpful to hear that, Ben, and we'll certainly look at those issues as we're developing up and trying to integrate both walking and cycling into the township. It's going to be a very important feature going forward because there's an emission reduction plan that government's coming out with. It's going to be regulatory, and there's a lot of funding associated with that. So the more that we can demonstrate that there are choices, for example, in transport, the better Featherston will be off. Natasha.
Okay, well, just one more thing. When I talk to people, elderly people, and say at the bowling club on a Friday night, a lot of people say that they've been trying for years to get footpaths, and the council says one footpath on one side of the road is enough. That's not enough. If you've got a disability in a wheelchair or young children, you need to take the shortest route to get to the shops or to get to the doctor. I don't believe that policy is suitable at all. I think there should be really good infrastructure, plumbing, footpath. I think we need to address that.
Thank you for that. We'll look into that because that's what this plan's about, and it's becoming more urban area, and often in rural small towns there is the one footpath on one side to start with, and those sorts of things, and less curb and channeling. So that's a map factor that we can take into account. Thank you. Natasha?
Thank you.
Sorry, you're on mute, Natasha.
Great. Hi, thank you so much. I really appreciate that you're here, that we're able to have this conversation. I've been in Featherston for over 2 years, and what I've come to discover is that, you know, I agree with so much that has been said here, and it's very much consistent with the passion for Featherston that longtime residents have felt. Their enthusiasm for the possibilities, I think, has I've been trying to find out what's important to people here, and what I've seen is a struggle to align or reconcile the vision of what's possible, which is why it's great that we're here, with the realities that people have been dealing with, like what Ben was just saying, that, you know, talking to locals who've been here asking for council for things for 13 years. And this is very consistent with what I've heard with, you know, when it rains, when we have a really hard rain, and local shop keepers down, a bookshop owner, for example, posted down on the main street when the rain was just flooded, where the main street
effectively was the storm drain. And so she had huge flooding right across the street from her sidewalk. And she posted about it, just saying, you know, this is, you know, in a way it's untenable if she's struggling to get customers to her door when the average potential customer can't even park their car next to the street, next to her door. And related to this is just the very physical layout of the main street, which has to serve as both a main street and the major highway. And so that, you know, I understand and have gathered that this is a known issue, but you know, I think this is one of the struggles that I think longtime residents have had to deal with, is even just the actual layout straight down the main street, where it would make sense to be able to build a vibrant main street, to be able to serve the desires of being, you know, fulfilling it as a destination, that some of the very fundamental issues are the things that I think local residents have felt out of control at the things that have become the barriers. Like, and I'm too new to be able to give it to you immediately, but you know, right next to the one single supermarket, there is a whole, I would call it a landmine of barriers and struggles to creating beautiful spaces, and even just housing. So I appreciate that if this is a much higher level project to be able to deal with some of those structural issues, that would be amazing. One other thing that I've long viewed as well that would be desirable, call it a wish list. I know Greytown many years ago pursued a vision of trees, using trees to beautify the area. I think there's huge potential down the main street for using trees to both to warm the place up and to reinforce the natural area. And another issue that I, you know, that I have seen at the quarry, there is a quarry that's come to Featherston that's been very problematic in the way that it came to Featherston. And personally, it's straight down Underhill Road, and it has had very little, there's been very little ability to access public, to give public input. It's existed, but, and this is a whole other issue, but for me, it's the fact that it was approved, again, how it was approved is a whole nother conversation, but to me, to the point of this conversation, how to reconcile what is really a very industrial issue that's been placed in a residential rural spot, part of Featherston, which is accessed directly off of Featherston's main street. And so it will impact a whole lot of, you know, it's the reconciling these two, trying to create a beautiful urban space while right next door, like just down the road, is another urban, or is another very industrial issue, and all the struggles that come with that.
Yeah, no, thanks for that, Natasha. And the staff have advised me about the quarry, and because of course I'm not involved in that as it's outside of this process.
Of course.
And those are matters that, you know, are dealt with in the district plan, and there is a district plan review going on. So there's opportunity to be thinking about those peripheral matters through that district plan review. So thank you for that, and thank you for your comments. Jennifer. Jennifer, are you there?
Yes, can you not hear me?
Sorry, we can't hear you. Are you unmuted?
I am unmuted. Can you hear me now?
That's a little bit better, thank you. You could just speak loudly.
Sorry, my connection's not very good. I I would really like to, first of all, I'd like to say I'm really happy that there is some planning going on and consultation about it, because there have been lots of amazing things happening in Featherston without, over the last number of years, without looking at a broader picture. And so some of the cool things that have happened haven't actually looked at consequences on other things. I know the quarry being one concern is that there's going to be this multi-million-dollar cycle bridge where cyclists are going to have to share the road, the gravel road, with the quarry trucks, being one example. What I would like to see for Featherston in particular, one of the biggest things that holds our growth back as far as our main street goes is that it's a very disconnected main street. If you look at Martinborough, you've got the main town centre around the square. If you look at Greytown, you have a very obvious retail sector and business sector in Greytown. But in Featherston, you've got a little bit here, then you've got a railway line, then you've got a little bit there, then you've got an empty space, then you've got lots of roads meeting together, then you've got more empty space, Cherry Tree Park, or all those kinds of things, and then you've got some more businesses a bit further down. That means that people who don't know Featherston, who stop perhaps at the south end of Fitzherbert Street coming over the hill, they don't know that there's more to see, and they'll get back in their car and drive away, and less likely to stop again further down the street for something else. So if we could include in the plan a way of connecting our main street so that people can see that there is more to see, and so that all the businesses can benefit and the community can benefit from those businesses then being able to employ people, etc. And the other big thing, obviously, that is hurting us is the derelict buildings that we have in town.
Yes, and sorry.
And landlords who don't maintain the ones that are occupied. And I've been in this position myself as a business owner, being in a building that isn't fit for purpose, but the landlord can get away with it because there are people desperate for commercial space. And so it keeps going like that. And then other landlords who are, making the most of the market. And we have lost a few, this year, lost a few thriving businesses because properties have been sold out from under the business owners, and they had no alternatives of where to go.
Thank you, Jennifer. That's very helpful, and we do appreciate that the main street is challenged, and we need to be reflecting on how to improve that with the various challenges at hand. So thanks for that. William, you had your hand up. Has it gone down again? You're okay? Okay, Bron. Was your hand back up, I thought, or am I wrong? Thumbs up.
No, it was just a thumbs up.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
And Rachel?
Again, this doesn't relate to practical building type issues, but one of the strengths of Featherston is how great the community are at doing things for themselves. Plant swaps, seed sales, the sports, all of the things that they do for themselves, making themselves self-sufficient, getting Matariki celebrations on the go. I'd really like for whatever happens to encourage and to support, put supports in place for those people who are helping themselves and each other in the community, doing the sharing things, because I think that's going to make us richer and stronger. I mean, it's great to bring other people's money into the town, but we want to make the town great for the people who actually live here.
Cool. Okay. Thank you, Rachel. I can just mention that on one of the chats, there's a question: who can see your messages?
Oh no, that's just.
Is that
that's not there? No.
No, okay. With the chat, it's not possible for me while I'm facilitating to be reading the chat, but the team are reading the chat so that they're picking up anything that you're putting on the chat. And the team here are also taking notes. So someone suggested about reducing the speed limit in the town centre to 40 k's. So Kendall and Harriet and that are kind of noting what's going on in the chat. So just be aware of that. It's just I can't do that at the same time as listening to yourselves. William, your hand back up.
I think I just had two thoughts around the transport aspect as well. One is, you know, with the growth plans that are happening further up the line, factoring in what impacts they may have on Featherston as well. There was, I think I remember seeing on the diagram earlier, another platform in Carterton and that sort of thing. Ideally, within the next 10 years, there would be better public transport links between Featherston and other areas. Even if it's a regular thing between here and the hut, you can catch a train every few minutes from Wellington Station up to Upper Hutt. But there's only during the week, 3 or 4 trains a day that come over to Featherston. So connections for there would enable people to be able to go out and enjoy the nightlife in Hutt Valley or Wellington and still be able to come home in the evening without having to drive over the Rimutakas. But also building those connections with other towns within the Wairarapa.
And it's good that you've mentioned that because we've had liaised so far with Masterton Council. We've still got to liaise with Carterton, but Upper Hutt's also on the list. And of course, because this has been identified as a growth area around a train station, working with central government and the relevant transport agencies around the nature of those services and what business cases might be made around that will be part of what we're looking at. It's not necessarily what we directly can do, but certainly they are very keen to be talking to the council around it.
Yeah, I was just going to say, William's point that's been well made was something that came up in the spatial plan as well that kicked things off. So thank you for that reminder.
Yeah. And Ben? Sorry, Ben, you're on mute.
Hi again. This one is just about the town centre, the Squircle.
Oh, yes.
I think that it needs to be looked at again. It does look lovely, but what Featherston needs is something for the people that live here, and what we need is something that can handle a lot of wind. We need something that keeps you out of the rain. We need somewhere where people can go and be safe. It needs to be able to charge your phone. It needs to be able to charge your car. It needs to fix your bike. It needs to have shelter because sometimes people need somewhere to go. And this is an opportunity. We could do a Squircle 2.0 and make it an area that would benefit people rather than it just being there and you walk through it on a windy day and you see a market stall and everything's getting blown over. Well, let's create a big shelter and put solar panels on it. That's my thought. Thanks.
Thank you. And we all did go and look at the Squircle. What we understand is it's not quite yet a completed plan. So what we're doing is looking at those plans and then how we might integrate it. And certainly I asked one of the questions, there was someone sitting outside the men shed one day there, and I said, what is this used for? And he didn't know. So he thought it was something around a market. So don't worry, we've got Squircle on the list of things to investigate and how to integrate it and to look at the plans that aren't yet completed as well. Thank you. Just before I really want to move on, but for anyone who hasn't said anything, is there anyone who hasn't said anything that would like to talk about their vision and what they'd like to see, you know, for Featherston going forward? Would you like to put your hand up?
Possibly Erin down the bottom.
Oh, sorry, Erin. Thank you. Erin, could you just thank you?
Yep.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi there. My situation is a little bit different, so I'll just briefly share with you where I come from. I've been involved in Featherston for over 25 years now, and we farm the land that's on the boundary of Featherston. So we actually are part of the rural community as well as part of the urban community, and we straddle that. We have one foot in one and one in the other. And there's been a lot of change in the time that I've been involved in Featherston. And sometimes I'm really actually quite amazed by the good things that have come to Featherston. And I remember the days back in the 1990s where there was no such thing as an eating place in town, let alone in the evening. People came to Featherston and they immediately turned off to Martinborough. So what we're looking at in Featherston now in a generation is really quite unrecognisable. And clearly there's a lot more work to do, I agree. But we have actually come a long way as a community, and we're not just a residential community, we are a rural community as well. We have a thriving dairy and grazing industry that underpins Featherston. It's not just a commuter town. And just a couple of things that people have raised about the main street and about the lack of any just sort of desire by landlords to do anything with their buildings. To me, that's a real inertia. That's what I've observed over the years, because back in the day, they were as cheap as chips. You couldn't even give them away. So the reason that they're not being developed now, or, you know, seeing any kind of upgrades, I don't believe is because they're worth too much. I think we might need to look at some incentives to landlords, perhaps, you know, rates, rebates or something like that, but to give some kind of encouragement to get those properties developed. That's one thing. And the other thing is a question I have for all the people who are new to the town, like been there in a couple of years or 3, or have young families. It's lovely to hear from you tonight. And my question is, what made you come to Featherston? Why did you choose to relocate from where you were and to come to Featherston in the first place?
Okay, so I'm going to relay that question in a minute, but I just had one other question of you first, Erin. You mentioned that, you know, it is servicing agriculture and dairy, and it's a rural community. So can I ask you, just based on your knowledge of being there, you know, 25 years, that is Featherston like also a service town for those parties?
Definitely, yes it is. I mean, we have Farm Source in town, and we're really fortunate and lucky to have that. I think it's the only place in the Wairarapa now that we actually have Farm Source.
Farm Source, did you say?
Yes.
Thank you.
It's amazing. I'm pretty sure, like I think there used to be one in Carterton, but it isn't there anymore. So any farmers in the Wairarapa, if they want to come to their rural supply store, they actually come to Featherston. So Featherston has got the opportunity to really, you know, cater to those diverse needs. You know, we talked about diversity before, about, you know, including everybody. And so let's not forget about our rural population.
No, thank you for that, because we are trying to understand, you know, the role of Featherston, because that's really critical. So having identified to that, I haven't heard that before. So thank you very much for identifying that. I'm going to now put Erin's question to the floor for those of you who are newer residents to Featherston. She's asked the question, why did you come to Featherston? Would anyone like to answer that question? Don't be shy. Was it affordable housing?
I'll answer it. Affordable housing was one of them. And secondly, it's a beautiful country town where it's nice and quiet. It's not part of a big city, but I can still commute to the city and work. So, so I have the best of both worlds. I can work in the city, but I can come home to a beautiful town.
Right.
So Jennifer, can I ask a question? You've identified some qualities that you really like about Featherston, and actually that's one of the questions on the form as well. We are looking at Featherston growing by 900 people, probably more actually, over the next 30 years. I'm just wondering, so you're comfortable though that it might change at the same time? You don't want it just to stay the same, that it might have more residents, just like you're a new resident?
Is that for me?
Yeah, that's back to you.
No.
It wouldn't, another 900 wouldn't probably bother me too much, because it's we've got a lot of space around, I suppose. But you would need to have the infrastructure to actually cope with that, because there's power cuts all the time. Every time the wind blows, the power goes out. So you would need to actually really put the infrastructure in there before you could actually expand. There's no point putting more residents in if you can't cope with it.
But at the same time, I'm also hearing from you that there are some qualities that you really like it is relatively quiet compared to, say, a big urban metropolitan area.
Correct, yeah. And you're close to the hills, like you can go cycling into the hills, you can go walking. I'm literally only a few minutes down the road and I can be walking through a rural part and go for a run with the cows. It's beautiful, yeah.
Cool, thank you. So Natasha, why did you move here?
For us, it was, and we actually moved from overseas and had been living in a very urban setting in a 10th floor condo for 5 years. And so we really craved, initially it was to be in Wellington, but weighing out what we wanted, we're actually on a lifestyle block because we wanted space. And so we found we were able to get a lot more for our money here. And we also were looking for a slower pace, which we found, and it's been lovely. And it's been very wonderful to meet so many longtime community members that have been so passionate for years about their community. And so to move to a place where we could feel a part of that has been really, really nice.
Fantastic.
Thank you for that.
And Sam?
Yeah, so we moved from New Plymouth and we came to Upper Hutt to start off with. And it wasn't very nice in Upper Hutt, but we were fortunate enough to be able to afford a house in Featherston, so that gave us the best of both worlds. Again, I could commute into the city or Upper Hutt, but also come back over the hill into paradise every day, pretty much.
So you're really pleased you moved?
Yeah, so it was a combination of affordable housing, a beautiful place, and beautiful part of the country in general. Yeah.
Fantastic, thank you. And William, oh sorry, Rachel, you had your hand up first.
Yeah, pretty much what other people are saying, the neighbourhood and the community. For me also, I've got a family here, so ageing mother-in-law, and my husband is from here and all of his family. So when we were looking for somewhere that was a neighbourhood, this is an easy place to be. Yeah, it's just neighbourhood. I lived in we didn't come far, we came from Upper Hutt, so it's not like a major change. You know, I've been in New Zealand for a very, very long time, but the kids have left home and we can do what we like now. So yeah, it's time to be able to get on to the next phase of our life.
Fantastic, thanks Rachel. And William?
Yeah, we moved just over a year ago, and I think it's a combination of most of the factors people have already talked about. We came from Petone, and it was the price that we could afford to buy here, whereas we really couldn't afford any closer to Wellington. It's proximity to family. It's the lower density of living, and the ability for us to have a large garden and grow vegetables and support ourselves and be involved in the community. We've got much better community links in Featherston than we ever had in the 5 years we lived in Petone. And so I think that all these aspects all kind of play together. It's no one single thing. I also grew up on sheep and beef farms in the middle of nowhere, and so having a sense of space after living in a city is definitely one of the pluses for me as well.
William, I just missed where you said you'd come from, where you'd moved. Was that Levin?
Petone.
Petone, thank you. Was there anybody else who wanted to mention why they've come, or have we covered everybody who would like to say anything? I think we have, fantastic. It's 8 o'clock, guys. We've touched a little bit. Oh, Ben, was there something, your hands up? Is there something? We'll carry on, thank you.
Sorry, yeah, one thing again, sorry to keep bringing things up, but yeah, the Hill Road, there's one. So, you know, when you talk about the Hill Road with people, and it's windy, you have to pretty much admit that, yes, it is quite dangerous. Be very careful. And yes, people do die up there. It would be really great if there was a tunnel, but that will never happen, I guess. But, you know, we know that this side of the hill, the road's terrible. The other side, it's a bit better. Yeah. I'd love to see that improved.
Okay,
Thank you for that.
Now, I'm just going to go on to question 2 at the moment.
Would you like me to write, Marie? I can write if that helps. I can write the answers as they come in.
Oh, that's fine. Daphne, was there something, sorry, I just missed you, but I was going to carry on. Was there something you wanted to add?
Yeah. No, I just wanted to ask a question about the process in as far as what I'm hearing a lot of people saying is how much they love where they're living and lots of aspects about their living, but there's continuous referral to things that could be fixed now, the infrastructure, some of the local stuff. Is there an opportunity in this process to say, actually, we're not ready for growth yet, so we will fix these things and improve people's lives who are already living here, and in the future, we will look at growth? Or is the end of this process kind of predetermined that the things we put in place are to fund that growth?
I think the reality is that Featherston is growing, and it's not like you can't just put up a wall and say to people, please don't come, because they're already coming. And as I said in the beginning, in terms of the process, we can look at both, you know, the medium and the longer term, but also, as you've identified, there might be some quick wins to improve some things. Ultimately, it's council's decision in terms of funding, and we need to explore those funding options, including in partnership with other agencies and central government, of what are the most important things to do now and what are the most important things to do in the medium or the longer term. So that'll be part of the process. Jennifer?
Hi.
Hi.
Will part of this process and the looking at the district plan include making things easier for people who are trying to invest in our community? Because over the last 10 or 12 years, there have been a number of people who have been willing to invest in the community who have not been able to because of roadblocks at council level, interpretation of the district plan. An example is the housing project on Fitzherbert Harrison Street West, I think, East, I mean, where we had a developer who was willing to build a lot of smaller houses in the community with communal breakout spaces, and that because it wasn't covered in the district plan, the council didn't seem to know what to do with it, and he spent 3 years trying to get approval for it and has in the meantime lost interest and moved on and has just sold off some sections now. And that is, I think, a big loss for Featherston when we need the housing.
Jennifer, one of the things that these processes are meant to do is to make things certain. One thing investors want is certainty, because time is money, as you've rightly pointed out. The spatial plan itself is a non-statutory document. Having said that, once the plan is formally adopted, it can be regarded as another relevant planning document that can be taken into account in the regulatory process. So it can have some weight. It's not as huge as a district plan, but this plan will help to inform the district plan. And because that review is occurring now, and Kendall and Russell are both involved in it, which is great because it means that we can be keeping each other informed around how this is merging out. This process will help to inform that, and then the district plan will go through its own process of consultation. So hopefully we can give more certainty going forward.
Excellent.
Thank you. And just before I move on, was there another hand up that I missed? Fantastic. Okay, so I'm really wanting to do a quick snapshot now. We've heard about some of the reasons why, you know, people have moved here. Just very quickly, perhaps, you know, 1 or 2 words from what are the qualities and character you would want to see retained? What would you be really disappointed about if something was lost? Disappeared. So thinking about Featherston, what are some of the, either the qualities or characteristics or something, anything that you think must be retained through this process?
The heritage of the town.
Heritage, thank you. Emily?
Yeah, thank you. Despite all of the difficulties of not having adequate footpaths and curb cuts and pedestrian and bicycle access, it is a 15-minute town already if you're within that circle that this master plan is focused on. And for me, that's critical that I don't have to get into my car to go to the library, the grocery store, the doctor's office. I want it to be a 15-minute town. I want it to be a small town. And I want it to be, yeah, I want to build density and not have it spread out to the rural areas and have all of the lifestyle blocks turned into a town that you then have to get into an SUV to drive someplace to. Thank you.
Thank you for that.
William?
I've got a similar point to someone actually raised in the chat already, but it's the sense of community and the people supporting each other, the higher level of volunteering that happens through the town. A lot of the things that happen in Featherston are run by volunteers, and you don't get that sense of community in some other bigger places. And the other thing I would not like to lose is the sense of greenness and openness that we've got, certainly in some parts of Featherston.
Thank you. Councillor Old?
Sorry, just made a faux pas on my computer. So for me, one of the most important things to retain is that sense of community, just like what William basically referred to. The village concept is amazing, and I think that Featherston has got that feel, that villagey feel, sense of community and support networks right throughout the entire town. So I'd hate to see us lose any of that, to be quite honest.
Thank you. Any other ideas before I move on? Fantastic. Then the next question was, what qualities would you like to see developed or enhanced in Featherston as it grows and changes? Now, I appreciate that we've heard some of those through, you know, the whole visioning thing. We had someone who had emailed in earlier that talked about a new skate park and recreational facility geared towards enthusiastic youth and tourists. We just also heard about Hill Road earlier tonight and those sorts of things. So again, what qualities would you like to see developed or enhanced in Featherston? Sam?
Yeah, that earlier email was me, so it's already on the list, so that's good.
Cool.
Thanks.
Emily?
Yeah, just building on what Colin Old said, the town does have a huge volunteer base, and one of the amazing things that's happening in Featherston already for revitalization is Booktown, and so the master plan should recognize the vision that Booktown has, which is to enhance historic, natural, and connections, and also its connection to the international airport while retaining its small town feel and providing retail opportunities for booksellers.
Actually, just on that, is there someone, excuse my ignorance, Emily, is there someone in the Booktown fraternity in Featherston that we should be contacting?
I think he's on the line right now.
Does that person want to identify themselves?
Tēnā tātou, kia ora, Craig Lincoln. I'm a trustee on the Booktown Trust. Booktowns are actually about communities. So yeah, the Booktown Trust and the council working on the master plan have a lot of interests in common.
So Craig, we're doing a lot of one-on-one stakeholder engagement as well, because we realise there are a lot of community groups that are there, including sports and Fab Feather and others. So perhaps we could connect with you separately as your trust and have a discussion around, you know, the aspirations of Booktown and what that means for the master plan, if you're comfortable.
Sure, yeah, the trustees would be interested in that, I'm sure.
Fantastic. We'll be in touch subsequently. Thank you. Anything else in terms of the qualities that you'd like to see developed? Sorry, Ben.
Sorry, just getting the mute button. Yeah, I just wanted to comment on the walking and the green that we have, the green spaces, because we do have the park, which is quite nice. And we have a reserve as well that's really good, and you can do a laps in the pram on the reserve, although the track is really bumpy. And there's also a track from the reserve that goes up the hill next to the main highway that goes through a bit of jungle and across a fence. You can just make it and you get up to that top car park lookout. That is actually an old walking track. There's an old public toilet in there. It's a great area. It's completely overgrown and disused, graffitied, but I mean, I use it for mountain biking. It's amazing. It'd be great to be able to walk up there with ease. It's a great lookout. It'd be cool if there were a walking track in Featherston or a walking tour that went to the Fell Engine Museum and then to some bookshops and then up to the reserve. It would be enjoyable to have a loop.
And what reserve are you actually meaning? Has it got a name then?
Yeah, it does have a name and I can't think of it, but it is just as you come up.
Otaraya Reserve.
Yeah, that's it. It's really nice.
Cool, thank you. Mark.
Yeah, I think it's really important is the moana. It's been planted out really, really well over the last few years, but it's just really underutilized. There's been a few problems down there over the years, and it's just yeah, I think it's just an asset that we've got that is well underutilized. And just listening to the other talkers there, our cycleways and trailways that we're hopefully Feather have got some plans in place for putting those out towards the moana, and obviously the link up through the bridge and everything else. Yeah, a lot of things are on the go, but as we were talking earlier, and Emily was saying about a lot of stuff as volunteers, is just our natural lands. But as I say, the moana is just well underutilized as to what we could be doing out there.
Yeah, and in some very initial conversations with one or two mana whenua, we have heard also about the importance of the restoration of the moana and also about the connections and with the moana as well. So thank you for that, Mark, because it is very, very critical. Now, who had their hand up? Was that, who have I missed? Can I just ask Kendall, have you been looking at the chat?
Yes, there's been a lot of talk about the swimming pool as an amenity that's important.
Yeah, so I'm just going to ask Kendall to relay some of the chat so that you can hear it. So Kendall, can you just tell us the swimming pool?
Yeah, the swimming pool.
What about the swimming pool? What does it? What are they saying about the swimming pool?
Sorry, I'm just scrolling through here. It's quite a lot of chat, which is great.
All year round, but not get rid of the outdoor pool.
What was that? Sorry, all year round.
But not get rid of the outdoor pool.
Oh, so you want an all year round pool? Okay. Yep.
Indoor outdoor option would be amazing.
Yep.
Gym facilities.
Are they public gym facilities?
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, we're just...
Yes, public gym facilities.
Yep, cool, thank you. Okay, anything else that people want to put on the table? Fantastic, you're doing so well, thank you. Okay, moving on to question 4. We've touched on this a little bit, but what sort of housing do you think Featherston needs now and in the future? Who would like to offer their views?
Don't be shy.
Could you repeat that question, please?
What sort of housing do you think Featherston needs now and into the future?
Do we have an option for that? Isn't that being pushed by national legislation?
There is some national legislation. Some of it doesn't apply to Featherston because it depends what scale of council that you're at. There is a national policy statement, but you do not actually fall within what they call as tier 1, 2 or 3, any of the larger councils. So in that sense, that doesn't apply. There's been some new legislation on those bigger councils that imposes the need to have more multi-unit development. So there is an opportunity within Featherston now to think about the form of different houses that you want. In terms of affordable homes, the market is such, and we're doing a bit of analysis on this, is that you might need other parties to come to the table, such as kāinga ora, to enable more affordable housing options, because the private sector aren't going to necessarily do that. So that's all on the cards. But what about, at the moment, you know, the majority of houses, single homes on single sites, and we respect that many of you residents, new ones you've just mentioned, that you like that bigger space, but we've also heard where there's been some smaller options that have been ruled out, and there's younger people who might want to move home, there's single elderly people, so there's different diverse needs. Do you think that Featherston, you know, is meeting those housing needs? So perhaps start with you, Mark, again.
Yeah, I mean, definitely the elderly. I mean, we've got an elderly community, and what we're finding a lot is that we have couples who have obviously one half of that couple has passed on. There's been families moved away, so you've got elderly people living in 2, 3, 4 bedroom houses. Sometimes they want to stay in the town, but there's nothing else for them to actually move out of into smaller flats or 1 or even 2 bedroom chalet sort of things. Obviously, if they sell the house they're going to get some good money for it, but then they're going to have to pay as good a money to get into something else, but which just isn't around. Obviously, the other thing which we've made some really good progress on is a lot of the rentals that we're how do you put, we're sort of attracting the undesirables, because you could rent it for $120 and then have 10 people move into it, have now been sold. So it's actually taken that away from those people that legitimately need a good rental. You know, they keep going on about affordable housing, and I firmly believe under the right developer, under the right organisation, you could build a good 2, even 3 bedroom house for under $150,000, $200,000 in the right area, made of the right materials, and a bit of property. So what the answer to that is, I don't know, but we just need some affordable housing, some smaller housing, that people can stay within the town, stay within the whānau, and be happy as to where they're living.
Thank you, Mark. Jennifer? Did you have your hand up, Jennifer? Are you on mute?
Sorry. Yeah, I did. No, I'm not on mute. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Yes.
Sorry. Just agreeing with what Mark said, really. We need a lot different types of housing. Some people don't want a big property to take care of, even younger people. They just want somewhere to live. Sustainable housing is a priority for a lot of people. So I think, yeah, we just need to make sure that we can offer a variety of different types of homes, and definitely rental homes is really important, because I see so many people begging for, is there somewhere available, because my landlord's just sold the house and all that kind of thing. So if there is some way that I don't know whether council can offer any incentives for for developers to do that kind of thing. I don't know what the answers are, but we definitely also need rental houses.
Thank you, Jennifer. And Colin?
Yeah, no, thanks for that. One of the voids we actually have is aged care and retirement village opportunities in Featherston. If somebody becomes a little infirmed and needs a level of care, they have to be transported out of the area. And I think the closest being probably Carterton now. Greytown does have a care facility, more specialised in dementia, I think. But yeah, so that's one of the concerns about where you have a very strong family tie, and one of the members of the family has to move out of the town effectively to be cared for in another town. So that creates a barrier. So I'd certainly like to encourage some sort of care facility and some sort of retirement village concept where people can move in and be cared for as well.
Thank you. And Sam, you had your hand up?
Thumbs up.
Oh,
It was a thumbs up. Yeah, I definitely agree with Colin there. Yeah.
Fantastic. Natasha?
Natasha agreed with that point.
You did. And there are some chats there. Kendall, do you want to outline what they are?
Sorry, just scrolling. Harriet's got access to that more than I do.
Multi-generational housing complex, guest aged care facility, kid-friendly houses. Oh, kid-friendly houses. What are kid-friendly houses? Who said that? Rachel Cooper. Was that you, Natasha?
No, that was me.
Rachel Cooper.
Yeah, so that was about in terms of location, safety, fencing, places to run around, places where you're not going to get asthma, warm, dry, healthy homes.
Okay.
Okay.
And proximity to school, you know, you can go out and play with your friends.
Great, thank you. One of the things Kendall did was just look at the school rolls, and they're all increasing in Featherston. And from recollection, Kendall, you said they're increasing more rapidly than all other parts.
Yes, in Featherston, I think it was a 6% increase in rolls, and that was higher than anywhere else in the Greater Wellington region, I believe.
Yeah.
So it is actually, you know, Featherston is seen to be a very attractive place at the moment for families. So there we go.
We've just got Natasha, the housing topic, perhaps.
Okay. Actually, I just wanted to respond to when you initially brought this up, you mentioned Kaingaora. I just wanted to make a comment about an insight that I gained. My husband and I work with, through TPK, we work with small Māori businesses. And one of the women that we work with runs a nonprofit agency working to help house Māori, and she's been doing a lot of work trying to help get Māori back to the whenua. And one thing, she gave me an insight that I had never considered, which was that often a lot of the homes that Kaingaora might provide actually put Māori back into a more challenged living circumstance than what they would receive if they were able to just go back to the whenua. So this is really an aside from that conversation. I just wanted to, from this conversation, I just wanted to respond to that.
No, it's a really interesting point, because when Kaingaora develop, they need to develop in terms of meeting different needs. And there are big funding opportunities through Mahi program now, through Kaingaora and TPK and others. So understanding that those designs may need to be different for mana whenua is important. So thanks for raising that. We appreciate that. Because we are talking to Kaingaora, so we can also pass on some of those things.
Great, thank you.
Are there any other comments on housing? Anything that you wanted to relay from chats, Kendall?
It's just been discussions.
Erin's waving.
Sorry, who's waving? Erin? Sorry, wait, Erin, yep.
I just wanted to make a suggestion to do with housing. Like if there's development of housing, I think safety is a really important consideration. And I think that the issue of safety needs to come into the design process when we're looking at housing, whatever that may be, whether it's standalone housing in a sort of suburb, or whether it's aged care, sort of more intensive development. I'd like to see Featherston adopt more sort of modern design principles when it comes to designing those spaces, you know, specifically for security and for safety, and like opening homes out to the street rather than having high fences around properties.
Yeah, thank you for that, Erin. You've touched upon design principles, so thank you for that reminder.
And look, because I'm conscious of time, what I'd like to do is, there are a couple of people's names that I can see on the board that haven't said anything. And I'd just like to, because we had a very open-ended question at the end, was there any other comment that you would like to make? So I just want to ask, of those people who haven't had a chance to have a say, is there anything that you would like to just tell us about your views on the future of Featherston, or any comments or ideas that you may have that haven't said anything at the moment? I'm looking at people like Chrissy and Perry, and it looks like George, and the Mayor's just joined us. Kia ora, me Alex. Remember, you might be the Alice in the room. I'm sure you must have some thoughts. So I'm going to take that those people who haven't spoken are quite happy. So Charles and others and Perry and Chrissy and that, are you quite happy not to have said anything? You want to give me a thumbs up or hands up or something that you're okay?
Look, I'll say something really briefly. I'm sorry, I'm not a Featherston resident. I live in Lower Hutt, but work with Fab Feathy for the Department of Internal Affairs. Just one point, I guess it feels to me interesting that climate change hasn't been spoken about overtly, or at least I haven't heard it. And I'm just curious as to how that is involved in the plan.
Thank you, Charles, for raising that. And yes, we will need to look at climate change and what are the implications. Generally speaking, my understanding is that there are likely to be more extreme events, as temperature rises. So we will need to look at what the implications of those extreme events are in terms of any master planning. So if some of those extreme events, for example, are related to flooding, then we would be needing to think about how is that flooding going to be managed within this master plan. And there's a range of mechanisms around it. And as it happens, flooding's already been mentioned as one issue in the town here. So we'll try to kind of dovetail, that need for change in infrastructure, but also permeable surfaces and those sorts of things as part of that process. Thanks for that. Okay, I did my 7-second trick. I waited 7 seconds before going on because usually it need at least that amount of space. So I'm just going to keep it open at the moment for those people who haven't had a chance to have a say. Is there anyone else that would like to just mention anything that maybe hasn't been said, just like climate change wasn't, or maybe an idea that you've got that you'd really like to share?
Erin's got her hand up.
Sorry, it just occurred to me when Charles spoke about climate change. I mean, about giving some consideration to community gardens or something like that, projects where we can engage people in doing those sorts of activities, but also creates food. Because just getting back to that whole residential, rural sort of space that we live in, it's actually, we produce food, so there's no reason why we can't produce food in town and sort of the residential areas. And I actually divide my time between Featherston and Cambridge. And I don't know whether anybody knows Cambridge very well, but there's actually a street in Cambridge that is planted in citrus trees. So all down the whole length of the street on one side, and then on the other is all these orange trees and lemon trees and mandarin trees, and people just come and take the fruit.
Fantastic. And look, there are other places too that have community gardens on public land, so that's an option that we can be looking at going forward. And as well as the food, it also helps build community. So thanks for that. I'm going to not necessarily do an order. I'm going to do those who haven't had so much of a chance to speak. So Craig.
Good, I know. Just very quickly, just to chip in, I'm conscious of time. I see the master plan as an opportunity to work on infrastructure and housing as a means to enable Featherston to grow significantly with its population in a brownfields way, and without sacrificing character. Yeah, I think that about sums it up for me. I'm just very conscious that even since the regional council's work on the corridor and the council's work on the spatial plan, goodness, a lot of underlying assumptions have changed, and there's a need to remain really agile about how you respond to all these exciting and scary changes that are happening around us. So kia ora, thank you.
Thank you for that.
And that agility is really important. Sam? Are you with us, Sam? You're on mute, or you're frozen. I'll just go on to Mark while we're trying to see what's happening with your technology, Sam. Mark?
Yeah, just a quick follow on to Erin, and I don't want to load Joe up at the community centre, but there's a lot of work being done through the community centre and through Featherston and Fareham House for the community gardens. They're really good connections for anything that people want to know as to what's going on around the community. Just a quick thing, Ree, is I get a lot of calls and questions and concerns from the community about the understanding of how our police system's working now. We were talking earlier about a lot of problems about people wandering onto sections they shouldn't be on, things like this. Since the police have changed their way of operating, we don't sort of have the local bobby anymore. I guess it's just how does it work? You know, people sort of feel they don't get the response that they're wanting when things go wrong and things like that. So I guess that's something else we just need to, and maybe that's something the community board could be doing with the community, is to just let them know the avenues when they're concerned about something or when something goes wrong. The best ways of getting hold of the police is to sort the matters out.
Hey, thanks for that, Mark. And we haven't actually liaised with police, so we kind of identified that is a gap for us, so thanks for that. Sam, did you want to talk? You've got your hand up, but we can't seem to connect in. Okay, look, I'm conscious it's 8:30. I was going to pass back to Russell now, and we've just got a couple of slides, but there are a couple of questions that we didn't talk about, although it's kind of been traversed generally around the town centre and things. But there are forms that have been sent out to you, and would really like you, if you are willing, to, you know, fill those forms in and return them to us. Harry, are you able to bring up? Harry's just going to bring back up the presentation because we've got a slide about where they should be sent as well. So we'll just skip through the questions. So your feedback, if we could have it please by Monday the 4th of April, and the questionnaires can be emailed to that email address that we've put on the screen, if you'd like to copy that down, or otherwise you can deliver them to the Featherston Public Library in Fitzherbert Street in Featherston. So just very looking forward to receiving any further feedback via that message. Now I'm just, thanks Harry, we'll go to the next slide, going to pass back to Russell, who's just going to take you through the next steps, and then we're bringing our meeting to a close.
Yeah, thank you, Ray. Thanks for all the contributions, because it's been pretty open and good, but as we look to next steps, there's got to be ongoing engagement. That's across the multiple sectors that we have to work with. You know, that's been touched upon tonight in terms of linking with relevant agencies, plus more engagement coming up with the community. We've got to work at developing that foundation document based on what we've heard, and obviously within that there'll be some options analysis, and we put forward our best work. We'll also have to do engagement on that. We've got to work and shape all this up into a draft spatial plan. So that's key. And further engagement or formal consultation as under the requirements of the Local Government Act from 2002, and that's the more formal component. Then we'll get on to, we'll hear that and make necessary adjustments and finalise the master plan towards the end of the year. And all this work, it doesn't stand alone in isolation. It also helps inform the district plan, a current document which is pretty permissive, and the review period that's happening on that. Yeah, that's what I really want to say. We've got Mark, our chair for the community board, still with us. So Mark, would you like to say anything in in conclusion before we move to a closing karakia?
No, look, I'd just really like to thank everyone for coming on. I know I don't like Zooms. I'd much rather have a face-to-face, but really want to thank everyone that's come on here. And please talk to everyone else that you can to about this. And as we said, we're going to have some drop-ins. And if anyone's got any questions, all our details are on the website to get hold of us if you need to. But as we said at the start, this is about the community, and it's really important that everyone has their say and shares their concerns, because we've got some amazing talent out there, some amazing people that can contribute to all of this. And yeah, really want to keep it moving.
Thank you, Mark. Narita is hopefully still with us. Narita, are you there?
Kia ora tātou.
Thank you.
Mihi nui, Ree, Russell and Richard, ngā mihi for your kōrero tonight. It was awesome, it was a good conversation. So I'm just going to close us with a karakia. Thank you everybody for your contributions to the discussion. Nicely done, nicely managed as well. Kia so whakatakata hau ki te uru, whakatakata hau ki te tonga, kia o mā kina ki uta, kia o mā taratara ki tai. E hea ki a Ngāti Tākura, he tio, he hoka, he hauhu, ti hei mauri ora.
Mauri ora.
Kia ora.
Kia ora.
Night, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Ray. Thank you, Russell.
Thank
Cheers,
you.
everyone.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for all the time and ideas.
I think we have to save the chat.
It's good, Russell.
Yeah. That's quite well.